All right, so today we're going to do a deep dive into The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey.
Oh,
Um,
oh yeah.
it's like a classic
Yeah.
in the self-help world, right?
Oh, which is sure.
Everybody's heard of it, and I'm really excited to like unpack what's made it so popular.
Right.
So why don't we just pretend that
Okay.
we're actually talking to Stephen Covey himself
Yeah.
and just kind of picking his brain about these uh, powerful ideas.
I like that. I like where you go with this. And you know what's so interesting is that this book is not just for people who want to climb up the corporate ladder or
Yeah,
anything like that. Cubby really emphasizes personal growth
yeah.
and becoming just like a better person overall, which is something I think we can all relate to.
Exactly. And he divides these habits into 3 areas: private victory, public victory, and renewal. Now, private victory, that already sounds intriguing. What's the first step
Okay.
towards achieving that?
So it all starts with habit one, which is be proactive. And what Covey is challenging us to do here is really take ownership of our lives. And he says we need to focus on what we can control, our circle of influence,
Okay.
and, not to get bogged down by all the things that are outside of it.
Oh, okay. So it's about being responsible and not reactive.
Yes, exactly.
But how do we actually figure out what falls within our circle of influence?
That's where things get interesting. So Covey encourages us to think about the things that we can directly affect. Our own choices, our actions, our attitudes. For example, you can't control the traffic on your way to work, but you can control how you react to it,
Right.
right? Do you let it stress you out,
Yeah.
or do you maybe use that time to listen to a podcast
Right.
or plan your day?
So it's about choosing our response, even when things feel out of our control.
Yeah,
That's a powerful shift in
right.
mindset. Okay, but let's say we've got a handle on being proactive. What's the next step on this journey of effectiveness?
Okay, so habit two is all about having a vision. So begin with the end in mind. Now, this one's not just about setting goals, it's about defining your values
Mm.
and really what you want your life to stand for.
Okay.
And Covey actually encourages creating a personal mission statement, which goes way deeper than just like a to-do list.
So it's about figuring out what your true north is, the guiding principles
Yeah.
that will shape your decisions. But how does this differ from just, regular old goal setting?
I think of it's like this. A goal is kind of like a destination, whereas a personal mission statement is more like a compass.
Okay.
Because goals can change, but your core values and the kind of person you want to be, those should kind of remain constant. So if your end, for example, is to live a life of service,
Right.
then every decision you make, big or small, should align with that principle. It's all about making choices that are congruent with your ultimate vision.
That's such a powerful way
Right.
to approach life. But, okay, let's be real. We have busy lives, multiple priorities. How do we actually put these big picture ideas into practice day to day?
Yeah, that's where habit three comes in. It's called put first things first. So it's about prioritizing those things that really truly matter
Okay.
based on your end goals and values.
This sounds like it's all about time management,
Yes.
but I'm guessing Covey's approach is like
Oh,
a little
yeah.
bit deeper than just making a to-do list.
Exactly. So he talks about how important it is to know the difference between what's urgent and what's important.
Okay.
And often we find ourselves kind of caught up in the tyranny of the urgent, those tasks that demand our immediate attention,
Uh-huh.
but maybe don't actually contribute to our long-term goals.
So how do we break free from that cycle of just like
Right.
reacting to urgent but unimportant tasks? How do we make sure we're prioritizing effectively?
Yeah, so Covey introduces this really helpful framework
Okay.
called the time management matrix. So what it does is it divides tasks into 4 quadrants based on urgency and importance.
Okay.
And he argues that we should really spend most of our time in quadrant two, which are activities that are important
Okay.
but not urgent. Things like planning, relationship building, personal development.
Okay, so instead of always putting out fires, we need to be proactive and actually dedicate time to those activities that move us towards our larger goals. But wouldn't focusing so much on our own priorities make us seem like selfish
Yeah.
or inconsiderate of others?
That's a really common misconception, but Covey actually addresses that head on in Habit 4. Think win-win. He argues that effective people don't look at life as a zero-sum game, where one person's success comes at the expense of another.
So it's about collaboration, finding solutions that benefit everybody
Yeah.
involved. I can totally see how that would be crucial in, building strong relationships personally and professionally. But how do you actually create those win-win situations? Isn't that a lot
Yeah.
easier said than done?
It is, it is. But Covey actually gives us a framework for how to approach those situations.
Okay.
And it all starts with habit 5, seek first to understand, then to be understood.
Okay, so before we even try to get, what we want or even make our point, we need to really try to listen and understand the other person's perspective.
Exactly. And this goes like way deeper than just hearing the words that they're saying.
Yeah.
It's about empathic listening,
Okay.
trying to see the world through their eyes and really understand their feelings and their motivations.
Empathy, that's a big word.
Yeah.
How do we actually practice that, especially in the heat of a disagreement or something?
Right. Well, Covey suggests this technique called reflective listening. So it's about paraphrasing what the other person has said just to make sure you're understanding correctly, and also reflecting back their feelings to them. Like, for example, you might say something like, "It sounds like you're feeling really frustrated because you feel like your voice isn't being heard." Is that right?
So it's about slowing down, asking clarifying questions, and making sure that the other person just feels heard and validated before you even try to, present your perspective.
Yeah.
I could see how that would create a much more collaborative and respectful atmosphere.
Right. Exactly.
So once that foundation of understanding is established, then you can start to kind of explain your own viewpoint,
Right.
knowing that you're coming from a place of like empathy and respect.
Exactly.
It sounds like habits 4 and 5 actually go hand in hand,
Oh, yeah.
creating this like powerful synergy
Absolutely.
for effective communication and collaboration.
Yeah.
Speaking of synergy, that's habit 6, right?
That's right. And Covey argues that true synergy, where the whole is greater than the sum of its parts,
Yeah.
happens when people with different perspectives and talents come together and they value and leverage those differences.
It's like that old saying, two heads are better than one,
Yeah,
but like taken to a whole new level.
totally, yeah.
And I can imagine this applies not just to, teams at work, but to any kind of collaborative effort, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like families, communities, even creative projects.
Absolutely. I mean, think about like some of the most successful teams in history, whether it's the Apollo 11 mission team or a championship sports team.
Right.
What made them so effective was not just their like individual brilliance, but their ability to work together. To really bounce ideas off each other, to challenge each other's assumptions,
Yeah.
and ultimately create something much greater than any one person could have achieved on their own.
So it's about recognizing that everyone has something unique to contribute,
Yeah,
and then creating an environment where those contributions are valued and leveraged.
exactly. And Covey reminds us that, like, synergy isn't always easy.
Right.
It requires a high level of trust, open communication, a willingness to really embrace different perspectives.
So it's a reminder that effectiveness isn't just about, individual effort, but about leveraging the power of collaboration
Yeah.
and collective intelligence.
Absolutely. And even with, the best teamwork and communication, I think we all need to take a step back sometimes and recharge.
Yeah.
And that brings us to our final habit, sharpen the saw.
I love that analogy of the lumberjack who like takes a break to sharpen
Yeah.
his saw. It seems so simple,
Right.
but it's a powerful reminder that investing in ourselves is actually essential
Yes.
for our long-term effectiveness. But what does sharpening the saw actually look like
Right.
in practice?
So Covey was a big believer in what he called the 4 dimensions of renewal: physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual.
Okay, so it's about taking care of ourselves holistically, not just focusing on one area. What are some like examples of activities that fall into each dimension?
Okay, so for physical renewal, it's all the things we know are good for us, but sometimes neglect, like exercise, eating healthy, getting enough sleep.
Right, right.
It's about treating your body with respect, knowing that it's the vehicle for everything else you want to achieve.
Makes sense. And what about mental renewal?
Okay, so that's all about keeping your mind sharp and engaged. So it could be reading, learning new skills, playing brain games, or even just having stimulating conversations.
Right.
The key is to keep challenging yourself intellectually
Yeah.
and expanding your knowledge.
So it's not just about like relaxing,
Yeah,
but actively engaging your mind
right.
in ways that are stimulating and enjoyable.
Exactly, exactly. And then there's emotional renewal, which is all about nurturing your relationships, building emotional intelligence, and developing resilience. So it could be spending quality time with loved ones, practicing gratitude, or learning to manage stress effectively.
So it sounds like emotional renewal is about creating kind of a supportive and nourishing environment for yourself, both internally and in your external relationships.
You got it. And finally, there's spiritual renewal, which might sound a bit woo-woo to some people, but it's really about connecting with something larger than yourself. finding meaning and purpose in life. This could be things like meditation, prayer, spending time in nature, or volunteering for a cause you believe in.
So it's about tapping into that deeper sense of meaning and purpose that fuels our actions and gives us that sense of direction.
Yeah.
It's so fascinating how all of these habits, from being proactive to sharpening the saw,
Right.
all ultimately connect back to uh, living a more intentional and fulfilling life.
That's the beauty of Covey's framework. It's not just about getting things done, it's about becoming the best version of ourselves and really creating a life that aligns with our deepest values.
Okay, so we've covered so much ground going through each of the 7 habits. It's really amazing how they all kind of fit together.
Yeah,
It's like pieces of a puzzle to
right.
form a complete picture
Yeah.
of what it means to be truly effective.
It's like Covey's given us this blueprint, not just for like success, but also for living a life of purpose and integrity.
As we kind of wrap up our deep dive, I'm just curious, if we could ask Stephen Covey just one final question,
Okay.
what would it be? Like, what's the most important takeaway that he would hope that people get from his work?
That is a good question. I think he'd really emphasize the power of choice. He might say something like, the 7 habits aren't about following a rigid set of rules, but they're about understanding that you always have the power to choose how you respond to any situation.
So it's not about just like being a robot going through the motions.
Right.
It's about being conscious and intentional and really taking responsibility for our choices.
Exactly. And I think he'd also probably remind us that it's a journey, not a destination.
Oh, yeah.
There's going to be setbacks, challenges, times when we like fall short, but the key is to keep learning, keep growing, and never stop trying to become the best versions of ourselves.
It's like we're constantly sharpening the saw, right?
Yes, exactly.
Always refining our habits and skills and character.
Yeah, precisely. And what's so great is that these principles apply to literally every area of life, work, relationships, personal growth. It's just this like holistic approach
Right.
to effectiveness that goes way beyond just like, checking things off of a to-do list.
So as we conclude our deep dive into the 7 habits, I'm just left with this sense of, like, possibility that we can all achieve a higher level of effectiveness if we commit to these principles.
Yeah.
But where do we even begin? There's so much to absorb.
I think Covey would probably encourage us to just start small, pick one habit that really resonates with you, and then focus on mastering it. Maybe it's becoming more proactive or focusing on those quadrant 2 activities or even just practicing empathic listening.
So it's about making those small, consistent changes that ultimately, like, lead to the big results, right?
Exactly. And just remember, it's not about being perfect, it's about progress.
Yeah.
Every step we take towards becoming more effective is a victory worth celebrating.
Well, as we go forward, applying these principles in our own lives, I want you to keep in mind this question. Which of these habits really calls to you the most?
Yeah.
And what's one small step that you can take today, like right now, to start living it? Because that's where the real magic happens, right? When we actually move from knowledge to action, from understanding to embodiment. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. I hope you discovered some really valuable insights and are feeling inspired to put the 7 habits into practice in your own life.